Dear ladies and gentlemen, dear Mr. Chairman, it is my pleasure to present to you today at the virtual lunch debate on hearing care for all at the occasion of the World Hearing Day today, March the 3rd. The topic of my presentation is the use of hearing aids and cochlear implants. Are we fulfilling the need? Yes or no? I think one of the points to discuss clearly is what is the challenge to society currently? I think that we know that 466 million people are currently on the planet with a disabling hearing loss. This is around 5 to 6% of the world's population. Now, if we look into the split between adults and children, we see that 34 million are children and 432 million are adults. Now, out of this, if we look at the gender distribution, we see that a bit more men are affected with a hearing loss, as pointed out here by 56%, than women with only 44%. Now, if we just look at the EU 28 member states, we see that 34.4 million people have a hearing loss within the EU 28. And we also know that around 20% of women and around 30% of men in Europe suffer from a degree of hearing loss by the age of 70. Now, we also heard today that the World Health Organization estimates that by 2050, nearly 2.5 billion people will be living with some degree of hearing loss, where at least 700 million people will require rehabilitation services. Now, if you look into the prevalence of self-reported hearing loss, I would like to refer to the Eurotrack data. And on the horizontal axis, you see different age groups varying from -14 to +74. And the yellow-orange bar indicates the percentage of prevalence of self-reported hearing loss in the total of the different age groups, which is a bit above 10%. However, if we look at the different age groups, then you see from the age group of 55 onwards that the percentage prevalence of self-reported hearing loss rises above 10%. And goes even up to around 36 to 37% in the age group of 74 plus. Now, in addition to that, what is also the challenge to society? There's also something which are called comorbidities. Now, hearing loss is currently associated with a multitude of comorbidities and additional problems. These are like cognitive decline, mental health problems such as depression, for example, social isolation and withdrawal, reduced quality of life, fatigue both during and after work, less physical activity, and also a higher incidence of falls. Now, on top of all of that, I think what we also need to consider is what is the cost of not treating hearing loss. In 2017, the World Health Organization came out with a report at the occasion of the World Hearing Day, in which they reported that the annual cost worldwide added up to $750 billion per year. Now, if we just look into Europe, then we see that it adds up to 216 billion euros per year. And if we narrow it even down to just the 28 member states which were there at that point in time, then you see that the total amount was 185 billion euros per year. So obviously this is a huge sum. Now, if we try to break this down on a national level, then I think that you should look at the table where, for example, a publication of Sue Archibald in 2014 pointed out that in the UK, all types of hearing loss together add up to £30 billion per year as a cost. And if you look at the last presentation of Moore et al., just looking into the people with severe to profound hearing loss, we see that over a lifetime, this paper indicates a sum of $400,000 per person. Now, what we've also heard out of the World Report on hearing is that at the current rate of prevalence, nearly $1 trillion are lost annually from unaddressed hearing loss. So clearly we are talking about big sums, major impacts on healthcare budgets, for example. Now, what are solutions to the problem? I think there's two possible solutions described for treating what is called sensory neural hearing loss. On the one hand, there's the hearing aids. On the other hand, there's a cochlear implant. Now, from hearing aids, there are different types. So there's the behind the ear, in the canal, completely in the canal, and invisible in the canal. And just for your information, I've just put a picture there of 3 different types to have an idea how small they are nowadays and how almost invisible they are nowadays. On the right-hand side, you see a picture of a cochlear implant. And so there's an internal part in there, which is implanted by an ENT surgeon in a surgery, and there's an external part. Now, cochlear implants are only the correct treatment option for people who don't benefit anymore from a conventional hearing aid, so to speak, because the way the signal, the sound is transmitted is completely different. In the sense that with a classical hearing aid, the sound is transmitted in a normal way like we hear, where in case of a cochlear implant, the information is transmitted through electrical pulses within the cochlea and by stimulating the hearing nerve. Now, how many EU citizens, and I'm talking about adults, are using hearing aids and cochlear implants? Again, I am using the Eurotrack data commissioned by EHIMA. And on the horizontal axis, you see again different age groups varying from -14 up to 74 plus. The different bars with the different colors indicate different Eurotrack studies varying from a Eurotrack study from 2009 up to 2018. And this here shows you the percentage of hearing loss prevalence. And as I've indicated before, obviously, in the younger groups, the prevalence is much lower, where, for example, in groups of 55 and older, you see that the percentage goes above 10%. Now, what about the hearing aid adoption? So how often are hearing aids used? In total, what we can see is that there has been a positive evolution. On the left-hand side, you see the total adoption rate, and you see that it has grown from 33.1% in 2009 up to 41.6% in 2018. Now, if we look at the different age groups, which you can see on the right-hand side of the slide, you see that in the age group below 44, it is currently around 35%, with going up to 49.5% in the age group of 65 plus. You can see clearly here that over time there has been a positive evolution. However, I think what you should consider is that this is the percentage of hearing impaired people using a hearing aid. So that means that of all the people eligible of getting benefit from a hearing aid, only 1 out of 4, up to best case 1 out of 2 has a hearing aid. So what about the other 3 out of 4 in the lower age groups? Why are they not using a hearing aid? Now, if we look also in the degree of hearing loss and we look into the adoption rate in that sense, we can state that the more severe the hearing loss, the higher the adoption rate. So you see 6 different bars here, where the blue part indicates the percentage of people wearing a hearing aid or having a hearing aid, and the red part indicates the percentage of people having no hearing aid. Now you see that if the degree of hearing loss is low, only 17% has a hearing aid, where obviously if the level of hearing loss or the degree of hearing loss is getting higher, you see that more people will be having a hearing aid, with going up to 74% in the highest level of hearing loss. What is also interesting is, if you look at the table at the bottom, is that if you look at the median age, you also see that clearly that is going up, and that is linked to the degree of hearing loss. Now, what about cochlear implants? Do we see similar numbers? The answer is no. This is some data out of different publications from economically advanced countries, I would say. And you see that if you look at the percentages, that the highest percentage you will find is around 10% in Germany. So that means that out of all eligible candidates for a cochlear implant, only 1 out of 10 is getting one. In countries like Japan, for example, it's even below 1%, and other EU member states like Belgium and Netherlands, it's around 6 to 7%. Now, this is also confirmed by the data from Sue Archbold and the Ear Foundation in 2017, where on the left-hand side of the slide, so the left-hand graph, what you can see is in light gray and dark gray, you see the people with severe and profound hearing loss. So in essence, all these people would benefit from a cochlear implant. However, if you look at the number of people getting it, the percentage, you see that in a country like Germany, it is 10% in alignment, I would say, with the previous data I've shared with you. And for the UK, it's around 9%. Now, if you look into the senior population, so that's the graph on the right-hand side, you see that the percentage of people getting one is even lower. Now, the question is obviously, why is this? I think there's different potential causes of a low uptake rate in adults towards hearing aids and cochlear implants. On the one hand, there's the lack of awareness amongst referring professionals, so ear, nose, throat doctors, general practitioners or family doctors, geriatricians, for example, about hearing aids, about cochlear implants, their indications, their outcomes, and the hearing journey leading to a successful hearing aid use or cochlear implantation, for example. There's also the lack of awareness amongst patients eligible for a hearing aid or a cochlear implant. We currently have no national hearing screening programs in adults in place. There is the potential stigma, the fear of being seen as being disabled, because obviously you still might have a hearing aid on the ear, or you might see, for example, the audio processor of a cochlear implant. In case of a cochlear implant, there might be the fear of surgery. And other reasons might also be lack of adequate funding, lack of access, and lack of resources. However, in economically advanced European countries, I would say that this is most likely less the case. However, we still see differences within the 28, currently 27 member states of the EU. So what needs to change? I think you've heard from Dr. Shali Chadha earlier on in this lunch debate that essential public health interventions across the life course are summarized in an acronym which she called HEARING. And in there, she said that the different components should be in it. It's hearing screening and intervention, ear disease prevention and management, access to technologies, rehabilitation services, improved communication, noise reduction, and greater community engagement. And only the first four can be integrated and delivered through strengthened health systems. So in summary, hearing loss must be addressed as a public health issue. There is a need for policymakers to allocate resources for and plan strategically to promote access to ear and hearing care. Public health strategies should address prevention, screening, and early intervention of hearing loss. And there's a need to raise awareness with medical professionals, ear, nose, throat doctors, geriatricians, family doctors, and so on, but also with the overall population on indications and symptoms of hearing loss, the impact of hearing loss and its comorbidities, and also about the outcomes of hearing aids and cochlear implants so people know how much benefit they could bring. So with that, I would like to conclude my presentation. I would like to tell you that I'm looking forward to the question and answer session later on today. And if you would have additional questions, don't hesitate to reach out to me. I've put the contact information on the slide here, or you can also have a look at www.hearit.org to get more information. Thank you very much.